Grace Kelly is often portrayed as a tragic figure. Just a year after winning the Oscar for Best Actress, the movie star traded her life in Tinseltown for a tiara literally. The Hollywood icon traveled to the small Mediterranean principality of Monaco and married the region's ruler, Prince Rainier. She became the Princess of Monaco, but had to say goodbye to movies. According to some sources, Grace's husband in general and did not seek to make his wife work. In the biography My Days with Princess Grace of Monaco, her confidant Joan Dale claimed that the royal life made the actress feel trapped. Dale wrote, "I'm sure there were moments in the early years when she felt like something of a prisoner in a gilded cage behind palace walls." And in an interview with Closer Weekly, royal expert Jay Jorgensen echoed that sentiment, stating, "In that respect, I think leaving Hollywood was hard on her. She had to give up certain things, such as her career, to get other things, like status and position." Although leaving the movies was not an easy ordeal for Grace, she was not the fearful Violet that she is portrayed as in these stories. One only has to look at the final years of Grace's life to see that the former Hollywood star was an activist to the very end. Grace Kelly, Princess of Monaco, may have given up her career as a movie star when she walked down the aisle with Prince Rainier. However, that didn't mean the actress lost her taste for drama altogether. In the years leading up to her death, she began collaborating with John Carroll, who was in the business of organizing poetry nights for large audiences. They worked together to produce theatrical poetry performances, beginning with poems for the 1976 Edinburgh Festival. Grace was soon being invited to poetry festivals around the world. Over the next 5 years she traveled to numerous cities with her concerts. Kelly's itinerary included Dublin, London, Nashville, and Minneapolis, among others. Once, at a poetry recital in Vienna, the princess broke into applause. Carroll later recalled, "Grace spoke a little German. She had learned it from her mother. When she told me about it, we added to the program some short poems by Austrian poets mentioning the magic of Vienna. Grace recited them in German at the end of the program. And that drew a storm of applause." But the Princess of Monaco did not limit her creativity to the performing side. She also tried her hand at the fine arts, particularly flower pressing. While many of Grace's contemporaries did not take this art form seriously, it was said that Alfred Hitchcock was particularly critical of his friend's new hobby. The princess became passionate about it. And by the time she reached the last years of her life, she was starting to get really good at it. In 1977, Grace was invited to Paris to show her floral art at the prestigious Drouin Gallery. As Town and Country reports, 46 of the princess works were on display, and their prices ranged from $500 to $1,300. Despite the high price tags, especially for the time, all of Grace's paintings sold out. Within 2 years, the gorgeous blonde noticed her prints being sold on tablecloths, napkins, and cutlery holders. Grace Kelly also loved to write. 2 years before her death, the former movie star published a book called My Book of Flowers about pressing plants. In addition, she also touched on the topics of flower arrangements and even phytotherapy. But above all, the book gave some insight into how the princess felt before that tragic car accident in 1982. In her book, Grace recounted how she came to a sense of peace. The simple act of arranging flowers in their places brings the same peace as needlework, crocheting, or knitting. No wonder Victorian ladies spent hours making scrapbooks with pressed flowers and photographs. As with gardening, the time just flew by unnoticed. At other times, however, the princess realized how many creative opportunities this passion opened up for her. "My love of flowers opened many doors for me." Grace's book eventually became a bestseller. Copies sold like hotcakes. And part of Kelly's royalties went into the bank accounts of charitable organizations in Monaco. After all, Grace Kelly was still a movie star at heart. So when it came time to raise money for the Garden Club in Monaco, Grace decided to make an independent film starring some of her favorite people. In the early 80s, the princess wrote a movie script that was inspired by her love of flowers. The picture, titled Overbuilt, is about Grace helping a professor understand the unique world of floral arrangements. The actress played herself, and her friends, even her husband Prince Rainier, appear in the frame. Everything was quite light-hearted and made for the sake of entertainment. But, alas, the movie was never seen by the masses. When the final product was ready to be shown, there were only a few select screenings in 1982. And apparently it wasn't for lack of commercial interest. In fact, the princess was offered $6 million, about $22 million today, for public distribution rights. But her husband, Prince Rainier, was not thrilled with the idea of showing his wife's movie to the world. Because of this, the picture never saw the light of day. Perhaps because of these artistic pursuits, Grace Kelly began to spend more and more time in Paris. There she could enjoy the splendor of the big city, not forgetting to look after her youngest daughter, Princess Stephanie, who studied at boarding school. Living in Paris was the easiest way for the Princess of Monaco to fulfill herself both as a creative person and as a mother. But there may have been another reason why the princess spent most of her time in Paris. According to royal expert J. Randy Taraborelli, Grace's relationship with her husband was far from ideal, so the former movie star would occasionally escape to France to relax. In his book Once Upon a Time, Behind the Tale of Princess Grace and Prince Rainier, Taraborelli described an incident when journalist Gwen Robbins inquired about Grace's personal life. She asked why the famous lady spends more time in Paris with her daughters. To this, the princess allegedly replied, "Actually, I became very sad because I am married to Rainier." Some sources believe that Grace Kelly was traveling to Paris to get away from her husband. However, it seems that the truth was a bit more complicated. Sure, there were rumors that Grace and Prince Rainier didn't look alike and had nothing in common. But, in fact, over the years, the couple was able to work out their marriage, even if Grace's long absences were part of that arrangement. Commenting on this dynamic in his book Royal Expert J. Randy Taraborelli hinted that the prince and princess may have gradually begun to understand each other. When Grace returned to the principality from Paris, the relationship between her and Rainier was better than ever. In a way, they became closer because they didn't make demands on each other for emotional support, is what the writer noted. The princess herself confirmed this idea in a conversation with Antoinette Bricado. Grace had this to say about her married life: "The last 2 years, one way or another, have been good for us." But as Grace Kelly and her husband's relationship got better, things were different with youngest daughter Stephanie. The problems began when the teenage girl started dating men who were considered completely unsuitable for a woman of her stature. One of these men was Urbano Barberini, an Italian aristocrat who was 5 years older than her. Grace once caught Stefania kissing her lover. The former movie star was shocked. One of Barberini's friends, Dragon Andonet, claimed that Grace took great offense to Stefania, even forbidding her to go to the beach. Many believe that Kelly was too harsh on her daughter. The Princess of Monaco once told her friend Charlotte Winston, "Stephanie drives me crazy. This child makes me tiptoe around, review everything I say or do." Princess Stephanie wasn't the only one in the Grimaldi family worth keeping an eye on. In the years leading up to her death, Grace Kelly discovered that her eldest daughter, Princess Caroline, also needed her support. Trouble began on June 29, 1978, when Caroline bound herself in marriage to Philippe Junot. The royal groom was well known in Parisian circles as a playboy. He loved entertainment, dancing till he fell and freedom, which often bordered on irresponsibility. Naturally, Grace was against the marriage. And when Caroline and Junot separated 2 years into their marriage, the caring mother advised her daughter to file for divorce. Princess Caroline was shocked by such advice, because she as a Catholic did not even dare to think about divorce. However, Grace reminded her daughter, "Religion is there to help people, not to make your life miserable." In the last years of her life, Grace Kelly didn't just help the young women in her family. She also gave advice to Lady Di during the time when the future princess was engaged to Prince Charles. Interestingly, Princess Monaco and Diana met in 1981 after the former Hollywood star gave a poetry recital in London. The theater performance, which took place at Goldsmith Hall, marked Diana's first public appearance with the prince since the marriage proposal. Grace and Diana were chatting in the ladies' room that evening. Apparently, the future British princess realized that the black dress she was wearing that evening was completely inappropriate. Lady Di realized that all the media would discuss the blunder afterwards and was somewhat dumbfounded and frightened. Grace put her arm around the young woman and said sardonically, "Don't worry, dear. You'll see, it's going to get worse." When Kelly first became Princess of Monaco, she had to spend a lot of time and energy adjusting to her new surroundings. She learned French, made new friends, and won the hearts of the common people. In her final years, however, Grace became more comfortable bringing some elements of her own American culture into the palace. As Jeffrey Robinson explained in Grace of Monaco, a true story, the princess began to miss the earthly comforts she had known in America. Once her children were grown, Grace devoted herself to transferring elements of her old home to her new one. She subscribed to the American Book of the Month Club and always received many books in the mail, especially history. Princess also subscribed to Architectural Digest and the International Health Tribune. However, there was a subscription that Grace loved more than any other. It was the New Yorker. What the princess enjoyed most was looking through the magazine and cutting out her favorite cartoons.